Cubs and Pirates, Cubs and Reds, Cubs and Brewers. Who doesn't matter? The Cubs are playing against divisional opponents, and they're taking care of business. They got a 5.5 game lead for the division. Now we're wondering if there's going to be some blockbuster trades made. The answer to that is yes. What are they going to be? That's what we're going to talk about on the show. Who do the Cubs have that they can offer that another team's going to take and send the Cubs some pitching, starting pitching, bullpen pitching? They'll take whatever they can get. And we'll tell you that right now on the show. Like, subscribe, thumbs up. Easy for you guys to do. Cubs fans, hit the bell. Cardinals fans, very confusing. What do you say, everybody? It's Naren Desai. What's up, Naren? Great to see you. And I always love talking Cubs baseball with Naren. And let me throw his info up there so you guys can say hi to him as well. I'm at Broadcaster Mick on the socials. Naren is the quarterback of the comment section. He's the best out there. And I love when you come on and do the show with me, and I know everybody else does too. All right, let's get right to it because I know we're going to talk a lot because we got a lot to talk about. Cubs are in first place. We already have gotten into this. Maybe they're surprising us a little bit on the amount of success that they're having. You take out Justin Steele and Shota Imanaga, and they haven't slowed down at all. Matthew Boyd and Jamison Tyone have stepped up into big roles for this team. The other guys have kind of slid in there, but I still think they need starting pitching. So let's start with the trade pieces that the Cubs could possibly give up to get Chris Sale, to get Zach Gallen, to get, who knows who else. I don't think it's going to be Alcantara because he's been so bad with Miami. And there might be somebody else out there. You were telling me some names that the Cubs could potentially go at. But sticking with prospects in the system, let's throw some names out and kind of banter those around a little bit. And I'm going to start with Owen Casey. You guys know how I feel. You better sign Tucker if you don't keep Owen Casey. I think he's a very, very, very good future major leaguer.
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at the highlights. I've been following the AAA stats. The way the hard contact he produces, it's just a tough guy to trade. And the future's not promised. We don't know what's going to happen with Tucker. I don't want to trade him. I think he'd be a very valuable long-term piece. But at the same time, you do have to look at the K rate down in AAA, and how does that translate to the major league level? How long does that take? If he's still K'ing in his second year in AAA, how much will he K at the major league level? And then really, it's not a question of will he be good. It's like, how long will it take for him to adjust to the major league level? And that's really the calculation I think the front office is going to have to make, because I don't want to trade him. I think he'd be a very cornerstone piece for the franchise long term. But, you got to see how this team is trending, right? The team is trending. Hap is like a cornerstone clubhouse team guy. I just think if this continues, he's going to get extended. And and they want to keep Tucker, I don't think there's going to be a spot for him. So that's the dilemma that the front office has. And I think that as long as you trade him for someone that's controllable, then it's worth it. But if it's a rental, that's where we're all going to cringe as Cub fans.
Yeah. Well, the problem is you don't want to be the Mets dealing Pete Crow Armstrong, and then you got your front office going, well, we didn't really know if he could hit or not. Your job's to know that, right? And you got a rental Javi Baez, and then now the Cubs have one of the best young players in baseball. This is our Fernando Tatis trade, right? So I just worry about giving him up, and then, like you said, not for rental. If they sign Tucker, hey, you don't have a spot for him, trade him, get something back. What about Moises Ballesteros? Do you think they would trade Moises Ballesteros, who has been a hitting machine in AAA, got to the big leagues, held his own, really no position for him because he's not a good enough defensive catcher? They brought up Reese McGuire instead of him because of the defense.
Yeah, it'd be a question of to see what do the Cubs think of him, in terms of it just a pure hitting prospect? Like, what value does he have internally, but also what value does he have, in the trade market? Because you're right. I mean, he's not a 40 home run type bat. He's just a pure hitter, which could be like a blend between, 18 to 28 home run type guy, but just a pure hitter. I wouldn't want to trade him either, but because he's a left-handed bat that can play DH, first base, maybe be a third catcher, which gives a lot of flexibility on the team. You have that third catcher when you want to make moves, in terms of like pinch hitting and matchups, things like that. I don't want to trade him either. So like I'm kind of stuck. I feel that Owen Casey, Moises, and kind of Jefferson Rojas and Wiggins are like the four guys that don't want to trade.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody else, I'm pretty much up for trading in the organization, just because as long as we're going for it, going for a World Series. I mean, we all have our gear from 2016. I mean, I want that. I want more World Series gear than hugging prospects.
Yeah, that's interesting. The problem is when you deal for pitching, you normally have to send pitching back in some capacity. Like another guy that we need to talk about is Kevin Alcantara, but I feel like his value is becoming the same as Alexander Canario, or maybe they needed to trade him this offseason when it was obvious that there really wasn't going to be a spot for him, even though he played a lot in spring training. And you look at it and you go, what's his situation with options? Is he's an okay player? He potentially could be a great player one day. I don't think he's there yet, but I don't know where. There's no. I guess I put it like this: there's really no sense of urgency for a team to make a trade for him, because you'd almost look at it and go, well, why isn't he in the big leagues? And then the fact that he doesn't have any options, you really got to keep him in the big leagues after this year.
Yeah. So what I was doing the other day was going through, instead of like seeing who we have, I was trying to seeing what other teams don't have. So I went through a Fangraphs, kind of going back to late last year, and kind of seeing which teams don't have good outfield production. So I went through it and I'm like, oh, the Royals really are lacking in the outfield. And then I, kind of went from the team stats to the individual player stats, and it's pretty bad. I mean, they just don't have any production, and they're kind of fading, right? Like about a month ago, they were looking pretty good, but they're kind of fading. Cole Reagans is out, who's their best pitcher. Seth Lugo's on a final year of a deal. And like, I could see a team like the Royals saying like, you know what, we'll give Alcantara some run because we don't have anyone really any better, and see if he can develop at the major league level, knowing that he's out of options for next year. I could see them doing something like that. And there's other teams that match up like that, the Rockies, obviously, but they actually have some outfielders already in place that aren't great, but they're probably, more proven or, more better than Alcantara is right now. So those are the things I was kind of looking at, like who's just kind of dry. Obviously the White Sox are dry as well in terms of just major league talent. Would they do that? Like, would they go and say, hey, let's just play them? And, but what do they have to give us, right? They don't have much to trade, right? Like, we're looking for guys that we could count on in August, September, and October. So like a guy like Lugo, even a guy like Lorenzen, who maybe could be a weapon out of the bullpen, in the short series, like, he used to pitch out of the bullpen when he was on the Reds, and he went to the starting. He lost a couple miles on his fastball for starting. So, maybe he would get that back in the bullpen. I mean, he's a big guy. So he's got some power arm stuff. So who knows, right? And that's for the front office to get all nerdy with the data and, things that they can tweak and things like that. Like, I think there's something could be there in terms of matchups. And I try to channel these front offices, right? They're always looking at windows and, how we dispense the roster and our vision, to get an edge, right? So those are some things that I was looking at. And like, even like the Guardians would, but like, would the Guardians play Alcantara? They're competitive, right? So they would actually take a hit to do that, right? So there's some other teams that might fit, but they're competitive. So you need a team that's not competitive that might want a guy that they think is like a really high upside if we play him and let them learn on the job.
Yeah, I wonder if that's, with the Cubs, I feel like they'll make trades, and it's like, well, we just traded away our 2 third basemen. We don't really have one right now. We hope this guy can play third. For another outfielder. Hey, we have a lot of outfielders, but he's a difference maker. And it's worked out so far. I don't know if other organizations do it that way, because the way you're doing it almost seems like they're planning with, by looking and seeing where they're short and then trying to figure out if they'll, if they can trade to help that area, thinking that player could come in instead of just going and getting the best player position or not. Right. When I look at the availability of starting pitching, Alcantara from Miami is going the wrong direction. And I mean, like, are you really going to want to give up anybody for him? I mean, and with Tommy John, you look and eventually it could come back, but do the Cubs have that kind of patience? I think he's out. And I saw where, people were saying that that's the case, that the Cubs aren't interested. He's had just one bad start after the other. He's like an 8 or 9 ERA. You talked about Chris Sale with me before the show and the complicated contract he said. Look, the guy's been like right up at the top of the league over the last couple of years. The only thing he's got to do is just stay healthy. I like his demeanor. Like the fact that he doesn't take a whole lot of guff. He's already been in Chicago. He played for the Sox. But he is a top of the rotation guy. And I feel like for the Cubs, when I look at this team and I say, hey, are we seriously contending for the World Series? Like, really? Like, we're going to try to win it all? We got to have better top of the line rotation pieces. And Sale could match up against the Dodgers. He could match up against the Padres. He could match up against the Giants. He could match up against anybody in baseball. And then all of a sudden it slides. And I've talked about this on the channel. It slides everybody back. I don't know what the availability would be, but because of the fact that there's an option for next year too, I mean, it makes him, to me, a little more valuable if you're going to give up a pretty big piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be really more the Braves are going to dictate that. Like, are they really going to sell? Right? Are they going to bag the season, even if they fall out of it? They're pretty bad. I mean, I think they were behind the Nationals going into yesterday's game. So like they'd have to come on like a pretty good run just to get competitive for the wild card. They got a tough division, but yeah, would they trade him? And then what would they want? Like, you would think they'd want a lot. They'd want Cade Horton or they'd want Ben Brown. It's like, yeah, I don't know if I would do that, but like, how, I guess it would come down to like, how desperate or how, how focused Jed and them are on this year being a magical year kind of thing. Like, you don't know if next year, the next year's going to happen with Tucker or just player performance. Is it going to, how are you going to take another step? It's just hard to predict. So yeah, I mean, to me, if we had Sale, maybe we had Sale and another pitcher, another veteran or another proven pitcher in October with Minaga and Tyone, and then maybe Boyd's in the bullpen or he's a bridge guy or vice, maybe like they're tandem starters, things like that. I mean, to me, that would be pretty exciting, right? That we would have a good enough team to really do some damage in October. But I mean, again, then it's like, yeah, to me, it's like, well, is it worth it for the short run? Because Horton could be, in the rotation for the next 5 years, a pretty steady guy, but who knows, right? He doesn't have a third pitch really. He's pitching with 2 for the most part. And then, he's got an innings issue this year as well. So we'll see, like how long he lasts in terms of effectiveness and then also innings count, like when they shut him down. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm all for Sale, but let's say we had to give up Jordan Wicks, for him, or like Connor Noland and Jeff, like, and maybe, I don't know about Jefferson Rojas. I don't want to trade him either, but like another younger player that's like a couple years away, I'll probably be all right with it. But because those guys are replaceable, right? You can always buy other international draftees. You can replace them with guys from Japan, like we talked about in the previous show. Like those are other guys you could get. So I'd be okay with it. But yeah, they'd have to know that they're hitting on all cylinders. And they're really going for it. I'm okay with them going for it, right? Because they got that option year next year, so it's a 2-year window. Mm-hmm. The 3-month window is hard for me to swallow.
Mm-hmm. Well, the problem is if you're the other team, you're going to want the Owen Casey's, right? Is Jackson Wiggins that good where you worry about him being Cade Horton? To me, no. I think he'll be a good reliever, a really good reliever. I don't know about him starting long-term, but I would trade him if I had to. I'm not looking at it like Owen Casey. I feel like Owen Casey he's always kind of looked like a 10 or a 15-year big leaguer, the way that the ball hits his bat, his power, the maturity that he shows. Not somebody arguing with me about Alcantara being better defensively. I just think that Owen Casey's more consistent. Now maybe if you put Alcantara in left or right field, he'd be better. I only saw him play center for the most part, and I just didn't like him going back on balls. I just didn't like his makeup either. I love Casey's makeup, like where I look at him every day and go, man, this guy right here is the guy you want in your lineup every day. He was like the opposite of Pete Crow Armstrong. Yet they were very complimentary. Pete's kind of like fire, 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 fire. And Casey's more just like Mr. Consistent. But at the end of the day, they both do what they need to do. They help you win. If I'm teams, I'm asking for that. James Triantos is a guy that they could go after. With him, he doesn't make enough contact. He makes a lot of contact. He doesn't walk enough right now for me, but I think that's something that he could grow into. I've always said maybe he's like a Michael Young type of guy where he's just a hit machine. He's a super contact hitter. But I'd get rid of him if I had to, if I got the right price back. The guys I wouldn't get rid of are Cade Horton and Owen Casey.
The league is littered with really good players that weren't great for a couple of years, right?
Right.
So you're talking about are they once they're ready, and then a couple of years after that, that's 2027, 2028. We're talking about right now. So it's like you have to, you can only win this year's and next year's World Series. So I agree with you. Like, I don't want to give up Casey either, right? I want Tucker, as an anchor in, our lineup for the next whatever, 10, 12 years. But the real, is that realistic?
Yeah.
That he's going to stay, or that he's not, his representation won't go for the biggest payday, whatever, right? Did the Ricketts want to pay it? All that stuff, right? So, and also, like, how do you project anybody after age 35, right? How do you predict that? What's the 36-year-old going to be 8 years from now, like 7 years from now? So, yeah, I don't want to give up Casey either. But, yeah, definitely these guys like Triantos and Alcantara, to me, is still pretty raw. Like, everything you read about him, because of his body, his physique, his muscle, all that, it's just still a raw player. So, like, those guys just take a while. There's so many great players, like Matt Kemp, for example, was kind of like a really tooled up player, but it took him a while to become a great player. And he was great for 4 or 5 years or whatever it was. But he wasn't like great the first year or two.
Right.
So there's a lot of players like that. Even Teoscar Hernandez, if you look at his stats and the Blue Jays, he was very consistent, but he wasn't like a star. He's a good player, but he wasn't like, crazy good at Toronto. And then they traded him, and it just took him a while to like really get better. Now he's like, the sixth best hitter on the Dodgers, and he's a star. There's a reason why that happens. With experience and not being the focal point, you become a little better. So yeah, I just think that there's a lot of ways that they're going to go. I personally think that you got to look at Jed's mo in terms of like trying to outsmart the league, or out game plan the league, or out tweak the league. Those are the things they'd like to do. So I think you're going to see those types of moves, unless, like someone really steps up, like a team's like, yeah, we'll trade Sale, but like, we're not going to ask for Horton and Brown. We're going to ask for, Nolan, Birdshell, and, whoever, right? Like, I'm ready for them to trade like Luke Little and a couple of these guys for a proven guy. I think Luke Little might have a good career, but I think it's going to take, he needs to be on a bad team for a couple of years to
look, for this, he could be a throw-in, man. But like, to bring the competition to get Sale is going to be immense. He's the best of what you would consider pitchers on the market right now, right? If the Braves are willing to trade him, and I think they are, because they're out of it. They're not going to make the World Series this year. Zach Gallen, we've seen him in the past be a good pitcher, but Sale's the guy, when you look at his numbers, unless they put somebody else out there that we're not thinking of. I know he's up there in age, but man, in pitching terms, he's still in his prime. And there's Yankees are going to want him. I'm sure the Dodgers, with all the injuries they have, will probably dip their beak in there. You got, the Padres always seem to trade, even though they're trying to get rid of payroll. There's going to be teams that are going to be there. You're going to have to give up really good players to get him, I would think.
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be teams. I went through a few of these teams. They've sold a lot of their prospects, like the Padres, Yankees. They depleted their farm systems quite a bit. So just a question of, what do these other teams want, which is a total black box, right?
Right.
In terms of, how they scout the other teams. Like, these rankings are, somewhat PR from these organizations. Like, they tell you who they think, that are the best versus who really they want. So we'll see. Look at the Red Sox. The Red Sox are supposed to be good too, and they're struggling. So they've got some guys they might want to trade too, and obviously they don't want to bag it, but they're going to be looking to trade some guys as well. So I think you're going to see a lot of, I think it might be a seller's market a little bit, But then at the same time, like if some more teams fall out of it or decide to cut payroll, then the supply will go up. I personally think you're going to see more of there's not just one way, there's not just one lane to like prepare for October. Like Sale would be ideal, right?
Mhm.
But if we got Eflin and Bueller, I mean, they could be great too in October. We don't know that they won't be, right? It just depends
Let
on
me
how
say
they
this.
plan.
Don't go get me just another, average guy to try to throw into the rotation, right? Where you're trying to figure out if this guy's going to be your 4 or your 5. Because
No,
I don't think that's going to get you a World Series. I think the way that the Cubs have a chance to win it all is if they go out and get someone to complement the number one spot. Whether you go, well, you know what, Shota was our all-star last year, it's him, or if it's Chris Sale or whoever. But if it's somebody that's going back in the back of the rotation where you're another one of these, well, I don't know if he's going to be a 5 or a 4 or Colin Ray, Chris Flex, and he's going to be in the bullpen. You're not going to beat the teams that you got to beat in the World Series. You're not going to match up when it turns from a marathon to a sprint. You're going to look just like the Milwaukee Brewers, where Craig Counsell came from. Run away with the division and then don't win anything in the playoffs. That's why you got to go out there and get that elite top of the line starter, or cross your fingers on someone like an Alcantara or Gallen and hope that that when you get them, it rejuvenates them. You figure
that'll
something
be
that they're not
interesting to
doing.
see, what they do with these Tommy John guys. Like, do they think that they're still rehabbing more or less,
Mhm.
right? Like Alcantara, like 10 starts. How many starts do you get to rehab before you're over the hurdle of the injury,
Yeah.
right? Who knows, right? Like how they look at all that stuff, how they look at the their advanced analytics, the arm speed, the all the spin rates, all that stuff they look at. Those are a lot of things they're going to be. The thing with Alcantara, even if like he might run out of innings too, right? Because he's on his first year back. A lot of these guys that are first year back from Tommy John, they can't last 7 months, right? Because they've been rehabbing all winter, so they've got a lot of wear and tear on their bodies just to get ready for the year.
Right.
Then they won't have any bullets left in the tank. So that's another thing. Like that's why I was like bringing up Lugo. I was going through the stats. I mean, he's got a lot of innings in July, August, September, the last 2 seasons. So like a guy like that, we know it's going to last. Merrill Kelly didn't have a lot of innings last year, but it was really good the year before on that World Series run with the Diamondbacks. So like,
he's another guy to keep an eye on too.
Yeah, I mean,
he's another one of these
right?
free
He's only
agent
$7
guys.
million. Like that's his salary this year. So like the Cubs could be like, hey, we'll give you whatever, and then we'll kick in some extra money or something like that, right? Because they spent and they've been bad because of the injuries, right? They've been really hit by injuries, right? So like the risk their owner took kind of like bit them, right, the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So
that's why you didn't want to go. You're Baltimore and you let Corbin Burns walk, and it's like it didn't pay off for the Diamondbacks. You fired your manager in Baltimore, and you didn't have enough pitching. They fired their, the Diamondbacks have had all these injuries. The guy you paid all this money for hasn't really lived up to it. But yeah, Merrill Kelly's the other guy, another one of these starting pitchers. Well, I think what helps the Cubs with some of these deals with those two is that the Diamondbacks will trade with the Cubs. They probably don't want to trade with the Dodgers or the Giants and have to tangle with those guys in the division. It's not going to help them. That may help us out.
Yeah.
We've traded with the Diamondbacks in the past. I'm serious that I think that there's a deal that could be made for Paul Skeens, and I talked about it on the channel. And when we got a chance to see Skeens against Cade Horton, and I think Cade Horton is the future of the Cubs rotation. I really do. I said it from the beginning, and we kind of saw that. He hasn't figured it all out yet, but you can see every time he's out there, he's a little better. But he's got the stuff. So let's talk about this then. All right, Shota's coming back. He threw another great game in rehab, and as he's just building up, he's going to be back in the rotation probably 2 more of these minor league starts, these rehab starts or whatever, and he'll be back. I think it's coming. He's not going to have any setbacks, fingers crossed. So then you got him back. So now you got your ace, and you got Boyd and Tyone, right? Then
I think you go,
Then Horton, right? And then Colin Ray.
yeah. And then I think Ben Brown probably goes down, and
would you send him down or would you put him in the bullpen?
I think they send him down just to like save some bullets, let him work on a few things, save some bullets, and then I'll probably bring him back up into the bullpen, or give him another chance on the rotation. It just depends what they do by the time they send him down and then bring him back up. If they acquire somebody, somebody else, right, to put in the rotation by then. So, I mean, I think you're going to see it heat up a little bit because I think the Cubs are going to try and strike early because, I mean, like we talked about this before we started rolling here. Like we're playing the Brewers, the Cardinals are coming up the next few weeks. I mean,
finally, let's get them.
Yeah, this is a time to like really, separate ourselves from both of those teams, so then we can kind of coast a little bit, and then like that's where I think you could see something creative, right? I could see them like, hey, we're gonna get we might go get a starter to just save innings, just to save innings. Not like we're not thinking about these guys for October. We're still like, hey, we're gonna go get, some guy that we think that can, give us like 8 starts, good starts, but we're not thinking about October, and then we're gonna get another guy to be the October, hammer,
right?
Something like that. Like I think you could see something creative like that happen. I just think that's where it depends on the lead, though, right? So if like our offense stays cold and like Rhea, Brown still are struggling in the rotation, it doesn't matter, right? We're still fighting for the second seed at the minimum, right? We want that second seed. If we don't have to play those first 3 games, huge advantage. Huge advantage.
Even though those teams have lost in the playoffs.
It is. I mean, it's worked out that way. The hot team has kind of like stayed hot,
Right.
But I think
that's a year-to-year thing you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, to have home field in the first round, at Wrigley, it's a huge advantage. Those 5-game series, I mean, to me, that's like the biggest. You win 97 games or something like that, and you get the second seed, and you only 5-game series, anything can happen, right?
Yeah.
Those Rays teams that were really good. They won like 99 games, and then they have bat 3 games out of 4, and they're out.
Yeah.
And they're so
good.
Should
get
right?
the extra games. So what about? So you would keep Ben Brown as a starter? See, I think you move him into the bullpen. I
probably would move him to the bullpen.
I think he's a starter, but I'd trade him too. Like if I had to make a deal to get one of these starters, and they said to throw in pitching, it might hurt a little bit, but at the same time, I don't think he's Cade Horton. I think he's what he is. This is exactly the Ben Brown that I've seen. One day he's great, and the next day he's giving up 6 runs in 3 innings. It's like there's too much inconsistency here. That's been his MO through his entire career. Got good stuff, and when he's having his day, he's great. But when he's having an off day, he's just so bad. And baseball is a game of consistency. So I hope that he figures it out. But he's someone that if I you might be able to entice one of these teams that needs pitching back in a trade. You package him with somebody else and get a front end starter. Maybe Atlanta likes him. But see, I bet Atlanta's going to look, okay, well, we'll take, we want Owen Casey. We want Cade Horton. I mean, I don't know. I think to get Chris Sale, they're going to come in and ask a lot. You're not going to trade Cade Horton, probably not Owen Casey, but you might. Just because until they extend this front office, and maybe they have, and it just isn't public yet.
I think it's coming. I think it's coming soon. I think it's going to come before the All-Star break.
Like 2 years, like a 2-year one or a 1-year one.
I mean, I think they'd probably offer him 3, maybe like 3 with like a 3-year extension. I mean, but the thing is, like Jed might say, like if I go to a free agency, I can get another team to give me 4 or 5. I mean, that's
I would not sign these guys to 5 years or 3 years.
I think he's going to get 3. I think he might get 2 like front loaded, and then like the 3rd will be an option or something like that. So then he can renegotiate. But yeah, I mean, I think that he's going to want that. Like I think they're going to link him up with Council's contract. So Council's got 3 more years after this year. So they would probably tie them up together.
What do you think? That's a good move?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jed's proven that his master plan is coming to fruition. Right. Like Bush, Shaw, PCA, Horton, these guys are all coming. Like, these front offices know that like it's very methodical, right? It's like, oh, I've got Casey, I've got Moises down there. They're the next wave. We've got Rojas. These other guys are signed up. Hap, Pointer say I didn't give them 10-year deals. I gave them 3-year deals. So you can't say like I overpaid. I mean, you have to look at the whole thing in totality, right? Now, like Steele got hurt. That's not his fault. He got Imanaga was on a team-friendly deal. A year ago or over the offseason, we were complaining, but he's been right this year. So it wasn't a question of, he could not, like I always thought like he could be right, but the risk was that he wouldn't be right? So he is right. So, and then he's got a lot of longevity with the organization, right? Like he knows where all the bodies are buried. All that money that the Ricketts are making with all the renovation and stuff, like he knows that like they're not getting it. So they like their payroll, like compared to like in 2018 and 2019 were like higher compared to where we're at now. We're like seventh back then. We're like third or fourth in the league. So they haven't kept up. So like Marquee's obviously not making the money they had hoped, and post COVID, the little Rickettsville is not making the money they invested. So
I think Ricketts, you call it Rickettsville. I think Rickettsville is going to pay dividends.
Eventually,
I look at Marquee and it just feels so ESPN, and I feel like they need to get it more to feel like WGN. And it's just my opinion. It's not a shot at anybody personally. I worked there at one point, and who knows, maybe I will again. I don't know. But I grew up watching the Cubs on WGN, and it was damn good. Damn good. Like every day. Harry and then Chip and Stoney and Lenny and Bob and JD, and it was just, but it just had that Wrigleyville vibe. They lost that. You guys want to make money?
They brought in Sinclair to produce it. That's why, right?
Yeah, it's just too, it just feels like every other, hey, blah, blah, blah. Look, go back to what works. Give me a holy cow. Don't be afraid to cheer. I don't even know, but I can tell you right now that they I don't want to say they're hemorrhaging money, but it's been a big disappointment economically.
It's expensive to run a network, like the Dodgers just get that money in bushels, right? In wheelbarrows from Time Warner. They don't have to produce anything. Like to run a network, to run all the other programming and the operations, it's very expensive. So like I'm not surprised that they couldn't just build a network. I mean, I don't think.
But it's the Cubs, Naren. I mean, come on, man. Like
the Cubs are
we love the Cubs. We just want to watch the Cubs. Like, why not put all the minor league games on after the big league games every day? No, but like so everybody can watch all the prospects, and then you guys can have an opinion on Cade Horton because you've been watching him.
Changed, though, you know that, right? So like all these people that were subscribing to cable gave everyone $8, and like if you watched or not, you got the $8, right? Now it's like, oh, if you don't watch, you don't have to buy it. So it's all direct. So it's totally different. That's why
you
the
can
Cubs
do the. But I think though, when it comes to this, so I think if you put out great content, people will find it. I think Joe Rogan's a great example of that. You put out great content, people will find it. Well, they've got to figure out. They got to stop being ESPN and the MLB Network and start being the WGN Cubs, and they'll start making some money. I guarantee it. And how they do that, I don't know. But that's what they should be doing every day. Instead of watching and being like, hey, I feel like I'm watching MLB Network, which is, when's the last time you watched MLB Network?
Well, I lost it. I had it on YouTube TV. I don't have it right now. I actually miss it because I like to watch that quick pitch show to just
to watch the games real fast.
Yeah. But I got the MLB package, so I've got that big inning.
I do too.
Which is great. Yeah, the big inning is great. And then you can get highlights and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I watch it. It's hard to watch the whole league, though, man. I'm being a diehard Cub fan, and then you try to keep in touch with the rest of the league. It's like, how much baseball can I watch? But I try to watch as much as I can.
Tell you who does it right, though. You watch the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, I tune in.
God, they're good, man.
I tune in
everything they do
is like the score, and I'll pop into like
there's
sometimes
John Miller.
I'm about to go to bed, and I'll pop into the Dodgers game in the 9th before I'm about to go to bed. And
live from Willie Mays Plaza.
Finally.
And McCovey Cove.
Dude, I like their broadcast. They're good.
I love their broadcast. All right, so kind of swinging back to the whole principle of this, and I love, on these Sunday shows, I love going long on Sunday. Like I just do. I feel like Sunday's like the day where instead of doing the a 10 to 15, 18-minute show. You go a little bit longer. People are kind of waking up and they want a little bit more of a podcast. This is like reading the Sunday paper, the sports section. So we talked about some of the prospects. Ballesteros, obviously, he hits so good. So there's a team that would be like, hey, look, he can be our backup catcher in DH. Cubs can't afford that right now. Owen Casey's going to be the guy that if I'm in another organization, I'm going to try to steal him. I'm going to try to fleece the Cubs for him and then be Pete Crow Armstrong. Like watching the front office with the Mets try to explain that they came from Boston and didn't think he could hit, right? Okay.
Well, he was hurt, so out of sight, out of mind, right?
Or Rick Hahn trying to explain why they traded Fernando Tatis Jr. to the. Yeah, it's so bad. Sometimes you just just don't answer it. Hey, that was a bad trade. Or I blame it on a scout that doesn't work there anymore. But when these guys try to tell you, and you're like, oh my god, and that's the tough part about their job. So do you think there's going to be? I mean, we talked Diamondbacks, we talked Marlins, we've talked Braves, right? When it comes to Sale, and then obviously the two starters with the Diamondbacks, and then Alcantara with Miami that nobody wants anymore. Is there other starter, ace starter that could be available to swoop in and get?
Right?
Who's that?
The ace is tough. Pirates, I think, could be a matchup. They got Mitch Keller, and then a couple of these prospects they have that are already major league. One of them they both pitched today, like Mike Burrows and Graham Ashcroft or Braxton Ashcroft. Ashcroft pitched today. I mean, I've been looking at I noticed their names in the top 100 list on Fangraphs. They could be a matchup, and I'm saying they're aces. I'm just saying they're pitchers that we could use. They might take an Alcantara back. It just depends on the market for Alcantara, right? Like it's totally opaque, right? It's not like the stock market. We can't look it up.
Yeah,
right?
But come on. When you're begging people to take a guy, it's too late.
Yeah. Well, it just depends on the market.
Understand what I mean by that? It's too late. They already know.
Yeah. You already know if you don't want him.
Yeah,
remember Juan Cruz? Remember Juan Cruz on the Cubs?
Yeah.
Like he was supposed to be like the next hot pitcher, and they gave him like opportunity after opportunity, and then it never worked. They traded him, and then he became a pretty good reliever. I mean, those so common, right? That's so common. All these hot pitchers, they get hurt. They're good for 3 innings. They're not good for 5. They're not good enough to pitch every other day. Things like that. I mean, they have good arms, but it doesn't mean they can handle the grind of the season. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a few others. Like it depends on their payroll, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a guy like Nick Martinez could be a guy that the Cubs might want. He can pitch in the bullpen or start. He has got really good numbers too in August, September, the last few years, and he makes like $22 million. So they'd be like, we can't afford him, right? So those are just some of the guys.
I think that the Ricketts, you're putting them in a spot to win. It feels like this feels a lot different than the past. The Cubs went in last year and shouldn't have. They went in the year before and shouldn't have. They should have punted both of those years. They're definitely going in. Payroll's not going to factor in if they can get the right guy.
An issue. I think they're going to add a lot of payroll with these guys they don't have to pay half the season for, right?
Right.
So I think they are going to add, and I think they're going to go for it. I just think that the question is, what do we have to give up, right? Like in the offseason, you could just got them for free, just money.
Yeah.
This year, we have to give up prospects and whatever payroll that gets added. So it'll be interesting to see how they play it. Are they going to play for, if he gets an extension, is he going to be playing for a window? Yeah. Or is he going to be playing for, if he doesn't get the extension, is he going to be focused on this year? He might be offered an extension and said, no, we're gonna play it out because if I'm on the open market, I can go to another team. Now, does he want? I don't think Jed wants to leave. I think he wants to see this thing through.
Well, let me say this, Naren. I mean, the thing that the problem with giving him an extension is that we've been here before. We got to be here when the season ends. You know what I mean? Like we've been a team at the top. Now, maybe not in first place, but we've had some good teams, seemingly. Like the year that we were going to trade everybody, and all of a sudden they won all those games.
Yeah, but think about it though. This is the first year you're seeing the rebuild impact the roster, right? PCA,
like Pete Crow Armstrong,
Shaw, Horton, Brown, like all those deadline deals, those
I agree
10
with that.
years, right? So that's why
But
I think
until he does it, he hasn't done it. That's all I'm saying. Until he's gotten a team into the postseason. And that's why I think you do all that extension stuff after the season. I think you do it after the season. Hey, man, throw your chips on the table. Look, if you earn for a 3-year deal, we'll give it to you. Right? And for Hoyer, it might be the best thing that ever happened, because he'll probably, if the Cubs make a real legitimate run, then then he'll have a lot more ability to do that, because other teams might be after him. What I'm afraid of, on the other hand, of the same topic, is if they don't, and then we make trades like some of the deals Theo made, where you're like, man, this guy, and I know they weren't because he was leaving. It was just that he was kind of going all in every year, and then he depleted the farm system so bad we weren't doing, because we didn't have anything. I mean, it was awful. You just don't want to make a bunch of trades and not be thinking about the future, right? And sometimes ownership, and I don't know how the Cubs do it, but there's times where owners will say, nah, we're not doing that,
Well, I mean, that's the thing, that you can always supplant from free agency when your farm system's weak, right? And then you can rebuild it in parallel, right? So there's ways to do that, right? And the Cubs they're not resource constrained. So that's the thing that's like, to me, like the 22, 23, 24 teams that were like undermanned, they could just spent smarter and they could have been more competitive, right? And then like now that things are coming to, like now we're getting to that point where we can trade some of that prospect inventory because we can replenish it. I mean, there's a draft next month, right? If you have a good draft, I mean, how many guys do you need from a draft, right? The Cubs have barely ever gotten more than 2 guys in a draft, but if you get a draft with 4 good players, because you did a really good job in the draft, you have more assets to trade, and you can backfill these depth guys with these draft picks, these college pitchers that you get in the 4th or 5th round. I mean, a lot of teams use those guys as depth or as inventory for future trades. So, like to me, like you just have 2 or 3 good drafts, and you're right back where you were. And it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. Like I've had debates with people that really know this stuff on Twitter, and it's like it's not easy, but like like if you're taking a high school kid that like you think is going to be great, or a kid from Vanderbilt, let's go with the kid from Vanderbilt.
Right. Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, the Cubs schedule, you mentioned it. Pirates off day. And then, Brewers, great series at Wrigley. Then the Mariners come in. So this is a pretty good homestand. Then we got, which I'm pretty excited about this, the Michael Busch Lightning bobblehead doll. So remember that home run walk-off last year? It's pretty cool. Then the St. Louis and Houston to wrap up the month of June. But some divisional opponents. We finally get to see the Cardinals, which is a good thing, I think. Tell me what you're most excited about with this year's team, because I know we talked a lot of stuff with this and that. What do you like the most?
I mean, the most thing I like about it is the lineup, right? The offense should just keep going, right? Like I think down the line you could see Shaw in the middle, Dansby kind of like set at 7, 7, 8, maybe Nico's 9, because the other like Shaw's just a better hitter, right? I just think that's definitely what I'm excited about. And then I just think it's gonna be a different, 4 pitchers, 2 in the bullpen, 2 starters that are gonna like make us October dangerous. That's the whole goal, right? To beat the Phillies, beat the Dodgers, beat the Padres in a short series. And look at the Dodgers. I mean, they're tied with the Giants going into tonight. I mean, the greatest team ever assembled, is the greatest IL team ever assembled, probably. So, yeah. I mean, like, I'm excited about just, the NL is really competitive, but our lineup, man, just should keep going. Like, yeah, we've not scoring a ton. We're kind of sporadically scoring right now, but that's the roller coaster of the season. I think you're going to see this lineup just continue to grow and expand. I think, Bush and Shaw, I think, and Nico still have another, and then you saw Happ a little bit, these guys have another gear to go. And I think you're going to see Tucker and Seiya be pretty consistent.
I'll tell you what I've been most impressed with is, first off, Pete Crow Armstrong. I mean, it's been just fun. You got to watch him all the time. He's the new Baez, right? I mean, where it's just like whether he's running the bases, he's in the outfield, he's hitting for power. I don't think he's as clutch as Baez was when Baez was kind of, leading the Cubs in 2016, but he's getting there. I'm glad to see Dansby Swanson contributing. I mean, I think I've told you this. I think he's a big part of what this team does, but the Matthew Boyd, Jameson Tyone stuff's been great. I mean, who would have thought that those two guys would be like really, really good? And, maybe when Shota gets back, you just do a 6-man rotation a little bit, get everybody some extra rest while you can, save those guys from having arm issues. And then finally, Daniel Palencia. How about Daniel Palencia? Is he the closer? I mean, is he legitimately ready to be, is he going to have a cool walkout song eventually, like Wild Thing, or the song the Mets guy has? I just feel like he's kind of becoming somebody, and it's fun to watch.
The maturation process is great. He's got great stuff. We all knew that. He's got a rocket arm. He's put it together, whatever, I think there was a story earlier in the year about last year, and he didn't understand how options worked, and he kind of he had to take a little step back mentally. So I think that he's just matured, and, got some good guidance from, the organization, coaches, and other players. So I think it's a great improvement. So I'm excited about him. I'm excited about Hodge coming back. I'm excited about just the group, just kind of, can they carry this forward we're at 71 games. Can they do it another 50 and then another 50, can they just keep going? Because it is such a long season. I mean, some days when they play all these games in a row, it's like, man, they just played last night. Like there's another game, how do they do it? I'm just a fan. I'm like, I got to watch another one, I'm trying to do other things,
Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard life.
Yeah. I mean, they're young guys, they're professional athletes. So it's a different situation, but yeah, I mean, it's such a long season to grind through. So, and then just the pitcher's arms, just the attrition, what they have to go through to squeeze that ball, to get the spin, to get the velo that they do, just any moment. Look at the Diamondbacks. I mean, look at all those injuries. They looked like a really tough team coming in.
Yeah,
a ton of injuries. So yeah, I mean, that could happen to us too, right? Like in August or something like that, which would be awful. But that's just a risk. So just keep watching, keep enjoy summertime in Chicago. It's going to get hot and humid here. It's going to be good. It's going to be fun. And it's good to see. We need this. The Chicago sports is a joke. So this is great.
Yeah, it's great. I'm working on coming up there, guys. I've asked one of my friends, a former Cub, to come and do some shows with me. We'll see what he says, and if we can figure out a time to do it. But you guys get in the comment section. You heard the show. Tell us what you think. Get in there. The special extended edition of the Sunday show. But like, subscribe, thumbs up, comment, hit the bell, all that stuff. Thank you for being here, Naren. Great job as always. And go Cubs. Happy Father's Day, by the way, everybody that has kids. Happy Father's Day.
Father's Day to my dad and to all the dads out there.
That's right. Happy Father's Day. Go Cubs.